Hello, Whiteboard Economist here, and welcome back to my channel. This is the next video in my series for Calculus 1. And today's topic is chain rule. What is chain rule? Well, chain rule is a very useful tool in calculus. You'll encounter this a lot, and you'll use this a lot. And it's basically a way of solving for derivatives of composite functions. If you've been watching my videos, you'll know exactly what a composite function is. But just to review, a composite function is written as f of g of x, basically a function within the function, and cue the inception jokes. Now, by now you probably know how to find derivatives. Say if I give you a very simple function, say f of x is equal to x squared, obviously the derivative for this one is just 2x. This is easy enough. I'm sure you can do this very quickly. But say if I give you something more complicated. Let's say I give you a function like this. I'll use a capital F just so you can tell the f's apart. Let's say I give you capital F of x is equal to x squared plus 1. Now clearly this is a composite function. You have an inner function right here, and then you have this outer function, the square root of the inner function. So how would you find the derivative for this? Well, you can't just say the derivative of x squared. You can't just say the derivative of the square root of whatever. So what would you do? Now this is where chain rule plays in. Chain rule basically says to find the derivative of such a function, you would simply just do the derivative of the outer function to the inner function times the derivative of the inner function. Now, so how would you use this? Well, let's try using this on this problem. But for the first step, you want to, so to start off, you can start off by listing the inner function, g of x, is equal to x squared plus 1, and then you list the outer function, f of g of x. It's equal to square root of g of x. Now, this one right here in particular looks kind of messy. But if you've watched the first video on introduction to functions, we know that whatever goes into these parentheses doesn't matter, as long as it stays consistent on this side. So right now I'm going to introduce you a new rule called U substitution. And what U substitution is, it's pretty straightforward. You simply replace whatever is in these parentheses with U. So it becomes f of u is equal to square root of u, and just make a note that u is equal to g of x, which is equal to x squared plus 1. So in effect, this right here becomes f prime of u. And since it's a square root of u, so f prime of u would just be 1 over 2 square root of u. And since u is equal to g of x, which is equal to x squared plus 1, you simply plug g of x back into here to get this right here. So f prime g of x is equal to 1 over 2 times x squared plus 1. So this is your first part of the equation. Unfortunately, my board is too small, so I'm going to have to erase the top part of my steps. If you need these steps, you can just go back on my video a little bit and maybe write it down for yourself, but I need the space right now. So I'm just going to erase this. Alright, so we've already solved for this right here. And now we just got to solve for g prime of x. Well, g of x was just x squared plus 1, so obviously g prime of x is just 2x. So now you just multiply these together, f prime of g of x times g prime of x. So you know this is, so you have this multiplied by this, and so it's simply just, my work is a mess right now, but, alright, so squared plus 1 times 2x. Now the 2's cancel out, so you're left with x over square root of x squared plus 1. So this is your derivative of the function right here. Alright, so this is how chain rule works. Alright, so as usual, we're going to illustrate this in a more basic way, so you can visualize it more easily. Alright, so let's erase all this, and to do this, let's go with a very, very simple example. Let's say f of x is equal to x. Now, obviously, the derivative of this is just 1. This should be a no-brainer for you by now. But just to illustrate chain rule, let's overcomplicate this a little bit and put it in the composite function form. Let's write it as f of x is equal to square root of x squared. Now obviously these two are equal, but just to illustrate chain rule, let's keep it in this form. So again, let's separate out the functions, inner function and outer functions. The inner function, g of x, is equal to x squared. And the outer function, f of g of x, is equal to square root of g of x. Now we'll do u substitution again, so f of u is equal to the square root of u, and u is equal to g of x, which is equal to x squared. So again, let's go by chain rule. F prime of g of x is equal to, no, not equal, times g prime of x. Alright, so what's f prime of g of x? Well, f prime of g of x is also equal to f of u. F prime of u is equal to 1 over 2 square root of u, and going by this, which is equal to 1 over 2 times x squared. Now all you have to do is multiply that by the g prime of x, which is x squared, and obviously that's 2x. So the 2's cancel out, and so you're left with x over square root of x squared, and the square root and the square cancels out, so you're left with x over x, which is equal to 1, and this one matches up with this one. So clearly you see that chain rule works. Alright, so this concludes the tutorial on chain rule. In the next video, we'll go over some practice problems using chain rule. This isn't very hard. Once you get the steps down, it's actually quite straightforward and simple, but it's just going to take a lot of practice. Now, so in the next video, we'll do a few practice problems, so you'll just to reinforce this for you. And well, that concludes this video for today. And I hope you enjoyed watching and found this at least somewhat informative. And as usual, have a nice day.